Hello. Hello. Happy Transit Chat Sunday. Bow, 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 bow. What's up, besties? It's your boy, Mixed Mercury, the Astro Himbo, and we're here for our weekly transit chat. It is a lovely Sunday so far. The weather is excellent out here, and I'm going to try something a little bit different. Well, it's not that different. It's kind of similar to what we did last week, but just a different placement because I'm very curious about ingress charts right now. And since I'm not doing readings, I need to be reading charts actively somehow. So we're getting some practice with doing prediction oriented stuff. But it's good to see you guys. A lot of people are here already. Hey, Tree Talk. Tree Talk was here firsties, front of the class. We love to see it. Thank you for your eagerness. Hey, Samaje. Hey, Bestie. Hey, Desiree. Good to see you. Hey, KJ. Good to see you as well. Yes, yes. We're all alive. We made it. Love to hear it. I'm very curious for any of the Saturn return people. How is that going for you so far? It's been about a month, maybe a month and a half. So I'm just curious how you guys are doing. I'm starting to feel um definitely starting to feel the aspects to my moon with these uh mutable transits. In fact, Venus is going to square my moon this week and Saturn's getting a little bit closer. I'm not looking forward to that. Doesn't feel great on my moon or my ascendant, but we're going to push through. Couple of announcements before I get into it all is that I don't have any websites or domains open right at this moment because I am still working on tax stuff. I got extensions on everything, and we're trying to decide exactly how to designate my tax status moving forward. So I don't have a website or a booking site open just yet. Hoping to have those things open by the end of the month, reopened by the end of the month, and to start doing readings again, or at the very least selling things in my shop. So if you were looking to get a digital copy of the guides or anything like that, just give it some time. And if you're looking to book a reading, just keep your eyes out. I'm still trying to work out what I have the time and the energy and the space for in my schedule. But like I said, hopefully by the end of this month, I'll be a little bit closer to figuring out what that is and at least finished with taxes because this shit's so annoying, bro. So that's what I have going on. Do I have anything else? Anything else? No. And then I guess while I'm waiting for more people to show up, if you guys have any general astrology questions that you want to ask before I get into this Mercury and Aries stuff, please feel free to drop that in the chat. I do see some people have responded to the question about Saturn return stuff. Kratos. Hi, Kratos. Also, hello. It's kicking your tuchus. Well, I am sorry to hear that. Yes, it being my Saturn return. Saturn return is not my favorite time. I do have a coworker that has Saturn in Pisces, and I may have a couple of other ones, but she's definitely going through it. And it pretty much so far has been what we've said it would be in terms of these three keywords being uncertainty, speculation, and what was the other one I said? Uncertainty, speculation, and assumptions. I don't remember what the third word was. I know my job in general, my place of business is doing a reorg or reorganization in the department, the larger like department, staff department that I work in. And that has created a lot of uncertainty for a lot of people because it's just kind of unclear what it means for a lot of people's jobs while they're doing this reorg. So I was in a training the past couple of days in the next town over, in the campus in the next town over, learning a lot of staff culture stuff and all of these different things that kind of also made me think about more Pisces related things overall, especially around another word that I think is a good Pisces word is inference, like things that you infer or things that you kind of project into a situation based on your own like mindset and story and narrative and all that kind of stuff. Something that actually came up in the training. So I thought that was interesting. And I might have more to say on that once Mars enters Leo, but I still need to flesh out some of those thoughts because it might actually end up being a Pisces Aries thing versus a Pisces Leo thing. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. Desiree says, regarding Saturn return, I'm feeling some constriction, especially around job stuff. Loki might not have a job by the end of the year. No! Stress. Is Saturn in your sixth house or your 10th house? Or your second house? Any of your money type houses? Kratos says, it's so heavily uncertainty, speculation, assumptions, and inference and all the things. I've learned not to fight the flow, but it is a bit unnerving. Oh, Saturn is 11th house for you. Okay, gotcha. Ooh, I hope you get some clarity around that fairly soon. I do think, generally speaking, this whole like Pisces, like we're kind of flowing out of our last Pisces eclipse season, right? So there's a lot around those transits that are still unfolding, the Venus retrograde, the Mercury retrograde, the eclipse. Like there's still a lot of Pisces stuff that still needs to like play out through the end of May, I believe. So a lot of these stories, they still have not reached their conclusions yet, but hold tight, it is coming. And especially once we get planets in Gemini, I think that will progress the story forward, especially starting as early as next week with Jupiter entering Gemini, really changing up all of that Pisces stuff, getting some conversations going. That happens next Wednesday. So not this week, but next week, Wednesday, or whenever the 6th is. And we will definitely be talking about that next Sunday. But um excellent segue into Mercury entering Aries this week. Finally, we get Mercury away from Pisces. It has been there for a few months. I'm over it. I'm sure you guys are over it. Let's talk about something else for once. I do want to say the sun moving into Aries has been really interesting so far. And I still don't really know what to make of it. It seems like there's some chaos brewing a little bit. Politically, I've still been out of the loop, but I'm starting to pay a little bit more attention here and there just because we're kind of reaching that point where shit starts happening. So, um, more to say about that as I read this chart that I'm going to look at for today. Yes, very ready. Hi, Lo. Very ready for some of these planets to move out of Pisces. 10th house buildup has been so hazy. Agree. I have Mercury in the 11th house and work in a nonprofit in Trio. Oh, Dump just submitted his budget to get the program entirely. No! Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's really messed up. Also, hi, Gemini Rising. Me too. Um, yeah, not fun. Not fun for anybody. Don't love it for us, but hang in there. We just gotta let it play out, I guess. You want to see the stickers on my water bottle? Oh, maybe it'll bring it back in focus. Okay. So many stickers on the water bottle. Doot, 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 doot. They actually handed out a lot of these, like this one and these ones. Handed these out at my school. Very cute. And this one. Consent. Respect consent. Okay. Okay. Anyway, let's get into it. So, what am I doing? So, I want to do kind of similar what I did with the Aries ingress last week. I want to do a Mercury and Aries ingress read. So, I have a chart pulled up on my laptop sitting next to me, my other laptop, because it's my work laptop. Um, so I have the Mercury and Aries ingress chart pulled up. I have a couple pages of notes on it. And then at the end, as far as our personal read, I want to pull some cards. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the Aries ingress chart itself. The main reason I want to do this is for myself and also for you, just to see, since Mercury is a shorter transit, it's an easy placement to do an Aries ingress chart for and start to see if it plays out relatively quickly. And just to double check, I believe Mercury will be in Aries until June 6th. Oh, wait, what? Oh my God, no, Mercury's moving faster than that. Mercury will be out of Aries by May 23rd. So it's really only going to be there for like 2.5 weeks. It's getting slingshot out of this retrograde phase, it seems. So, um, oh, okay, period. Yeah, please let me know if anything came up for you guys after the last video, because that's the only way I know if how I'm reading things is correct. Because I can see what I can see for myself, but I don't know if it applies to everybody. So that's what I've been wanting to know. If you have stories or feedback from the last session as we're doing more of these predictive type readings, please let me know what happens. So yeah, we have about 2.5, almost 3 weeks of Mercury in Aries. So that'll be plenty of time to see if reading this ingress chart actually plays out. Again, reading for the US and US politics or US mundane astrology. Very curious to see if this plays out. So right off the bat, Mercury will enter Aries on May 6th at 6:38 p.m. Set for Washington, D.C., as always. And this chart has Libra rising, which already says a lot to me. And then just going around the chart counterclockwise, we have, like I said, Libra rising. We have the North Node, Saturn, and Venus in Pisces in the sixth house. Then we have Mercury and the Sun in Aries in the seventh house. Jupiter is in Taurus in the eighth house. Mars is in Cancer in the 10th house, pretty closely conjunct the midheaven, might I add. And then the moon is in Leo in the 11th house with the South Node in Virgo in the 12th house. So, as far as aspects are concerned, we're mostly dealing with trines. And then we have a square building between the Pisces placements and then Jupiter in Gemini soon. So mostly working with trines, the trine from between the Leo and Aries placements, and then the trine between the Cancer and Pisces placements. So first thing, just kind of a recap if you didn't watch last week's video, is that mundane charts are more house focused than they are sign focused. The signs really just serve to point us to planets and to tell us which planets are basically controlling which houses. And then by the end of it, I might try to add in some sign interpretations, especially for the personal reading on the other end. So as far as this mundane chart goes, immediately Libra rising, cardinal sign rising, we're obviously talking about things dealing with power, control. And then I've also recently decided that needs, just the general idea of having needs and needing to get them met, is a cardinal sign theme overall and not just a Cancer or moon sign thing. All of the cardinal signs have their own way of going about getting their needs met, whatever the needs are. The needs could be relational, they could be physical and emotional, they could be material, or they could be um, dealing with power in that sense. So I think all of the cardinal signs deal with getting needs met, just like they all deal with the experience of neglect. So with Libra rising, one could imply, or one could infer, use that word, that we are dealing with legal and legislative issues this month. Libra, thinking of the sign Libra as a cardinal sign, this is usually about tact and diplomacy. It's about strategies. It's about ways of manipulating and using language to convey ideas and desires, and to also collaborate with other people, again, towards this guise of like getting needs met. I would say out of all of the cardinal signs, Libra is the one that's probably going to try to make deals and negotiate with other people. We're also thinking about rationalizing or justifying needs in a particular way. And then there's also the theme of consequences and punishment and rules and rule following and things like that that come up whenever I think about Libra in this general mundane sense. So, uh, conversations this month, especially around legislation, like when you'll see thinking about other things in this chart, legislation and legal matters and court cases and things like that are something that I think we'll be seeing a lot of over the next 2 to 3 weeks. Ironically enough, I happened to catch a live session going on where they're talking about trying to impeach Donald Duck. So I think that's interesting. On the basis of I'm not sure what, because it was live and I missed the beginning part of it. But even this guy, and I forget who the senator was. I think it might have been um, Senator Green. Not entirely sure, but he was even saying that like them as congress people, as legislators, like need to have a backbone and have some courage and to like stand up to this man and have some dignity and self-respect, which I think is interesting because the moon is in Leo in this chart. But like it need to have a backbone and like step up to this man and actually do something instead of just laying down and taking it all the time. So that says a lot to me about the square between Taurus and Leo. But yeah, so there may be some an attempt at impeaching this man again or taking some legal action against the president. Um, More specific to this chart, since Libra is a Venus ruled sign, Venus is in the sixth house in Pisces in this chart. So that's technically our mundane chart ruler in a sense. And Venus, as a mundane planet, deals with usually women's rights and women's issues, but also I think just the rights of people in general. And what else do I have on here? Social factors, also entertainment and the arts, and then things like diplomatic resolutions, especially with other countries. But seeing this in the sixth house, it's giving like, sixth house deals with public health issues and sickness and illness, epidemics and pandemics, which we've been dealing with ongoing, but also with health services and then also just national services and civil servants. So workers and unions and things like that. So on the one hand, hey Hillary, on the one hand, I think, hey Jim, that because it's Venus and Saturn in Pisces in the sixth house, like we are definitely still dealing with the measles pandemic or the measles epidemic, I should say, or outbreak, whatever they're classifying it at this moment. Not just in Texas, but starting to see measles pop up all over the world. I wouldn't be surprised if that's a result of the US, spreading disease and pestilence as we've been doing for the last several years. Something else that's coming up is China has actually said that COVID-19 originated in the US, which is arguably something that I've heard since the beginning of the pandemic. So potentially more conversation around that and more speculation around the origins of COVID-19 and who is actually at fault whenever it comes to not containing the virus, which the US is obviously the most guilty of in general. But in this topic of like women's health or women's issues, obviously like trans rights falls into that and the attack on trans women not being able to use women's bathrooms, but also trans men not being able to use anybody's bathrooms. They kind of just want us to pee in the street. And then I wouldn't be surprised if women's reproductive issues come back up over the next month or so. I'm not sure what else they could possibly do. They've already banned abortion, they've already banned a lot of other women's healthcare type stuff, but we could potentially see more conversation or legislation around that changing, women's health issues. And then on the work and labor side, civil servant side, that part is kind of interesting to me too, because kind of shifting gears, we do have the moon itself in Leo in the 11th house of this chart. So if you remember from last time, the 11th house does deal with like Congress people and then like local governments and people who are directly dealing with passing laws and legislation and things like that. Also, allies of other countries falls in the 11th house. But since the moon is there, that's something that our public, like us as the people in the country, something that we're focusing on is legislation. So, kind of get another point for legislation and legal matters in the US and circumstances around that, especially with it being the moon in Leo. If I were to add in the sign interpretation of dignity and self-respect, and then bodily autonomy things with Mars still being in Cancer on top of that, yeah, it does kind of make me wonder if there's more women's health issues coming up. And then as far as labor and union and trade stuff, um, I don't know. I don't really know what's going on that front, but I do know that workplaces are becoming less safe because of laws around like OSHA and other worker protection stuff kind of getting rolled back. In the line of like health and illness type stuff, they have rolled back a lot of food safety precautions, and they've rolled back food safety precautions as well as doing things like banning dyes and stuff like that, which we talked about last time. So that's kind of interesting. With Saturn there, and Saturn representing things like land and material resources in that sense, I wonder if, and it is the ruler of the fourth house in this chart too. So I do wonder if, I don't know, I kind of wonder what farmers are dealing with, if there's any kind of like farming legislation or subsidies, um, money given to food corporations. Um, what else? Because I'm also thinking about Jupiter being in the eighth house of this chart, and Jupiter is the ruler of the sixth house. So yeah, I wonder if they will start trying to help farmers out a little bit more, or if they're buying up land. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, something that did, it either just happened or it is happening in Texas, is that Elmo Musk has a city, Boca somewhere in Texas, um, somewhere closer to the Gulf, I believe, probably outside of Houston, where he has this. I'm saying this in my words because I'm not exactly sure, like the situation. Because there's another thing that I just kind of happened to see on the news before we got on. Is there is a basically corporate town being built, and they're calling it like Star something? Star? I don't know. Anyway, it's a SpaceX town in Texas that is basically going to be one of those corporate towns where the whole purpose of the town is to cater to the people who work with SpaceX that are launching rockets and shit. And so there's kind of some crossover they were talking about. It creates this crossover that's like not, that kind of struggles to separate corporations and government, because if the corporation runs the town, and then the corporation, and then the town has its own like mayor and city council and stuff like that, who basically end up being people who run the corporation, and you get some blurring of lines that not only deal with um, these workers' rights issues, but then also environmental issues. I know a lot of people were saying that it being so close to the ocean, and just the kind of environmental hazards that it creates whenever you're launching rockets. um, that stuff like that, something else that I could see maybe being more of a conversation, because if that's something that ends up getting passed, then what other corporate type cities could they build for corporations like, Amazon, or corporations like Google, or whoever it is, these corporate towns who have like their boards and stock investors and whoever else making governmental decisions over those cities. I think that's something kind of sketchy. Let me see what y'all are saying here. Oh geez, not company towns. Let me go finish Parable of the Talents. Yeah. Yeah. But again, I'm only speaking in this kind of 3-week time period, but it does again kind of set the stage for things that I think Jupiter and Gemini is going to be dealing with. Not entirely sure how that's going to work out, but something that I am thinking about. So that's already happening. Yeah. Already happening. So I would be curious to know if that ends up being something that kind of gets, I don't know, written into stone or whatever, or if it's something that gets shot down. I mean, they can't really shut too much of it down. They're already building housing and stuff like that. But I do wonder if they'll create some kind of like designation or some kind of boundaries between what the corporation can do and what the government can do legally. Not that this government cares about laws, but could see more things like that coming up, or being coming into the collective conversation, since the whole Mercury in Aries thing is Mercury, talking about these kind of Aries type things, which I'll talk about whenever I shift into the next topic. Um, the food ag sphere stuff, The food and agricultural sphere is suffering because of the grants are being yanked away. Okay, okay. So there's actually conflict. Well, that would track then with it being Venus and Saturn in Pisces, and how Saturn usually does end up being constraints or constrictions or limitations around um, money coming in to those subsidies. I know a lot of MAGA farmers have been kind of upset that they can't, especially with the tariffs now too, like they can't produce at the same rates that they could, and they also can't sell at the same rates that they could, and all of this just kind of affects their ability to farm and to sell and to actually like make a living. And then there's also the issue of the actual like soil and the topsoil being stripped of nutrients from all of the overuse as well. So um, farmers are feeling a hit for sure. Granted, I work within nonprofit ag specifically. Okay, but funding and resources are being stripped from agriculture, and I feel like too, like being stripped from independent farmers or smaller farms, being stripped from smaller farms and then given to these larger corporations. So yeah, if it's previously local farmers or regional farmers or things like that and given instead to corporations, then it's more of this crossover between um corporate interests and governmental interests and the interests of the people. Lots of conflicts there. So not great. My sister is in nonprofit food security and works with ag people, and it's rough out there. Yes, and bird flu updates in the dairy industry. Yeah, that's another thing too. So maybe what's happening then is there being more, well, my hope would be that there's more conversation around all of these things. But with Mercury in the seventh house of this chart, that usually speaks more to like foreign affairs type things. But I don't see why we wouldn't still be talking about the direct impact that this is having on us. But maybe it's just not time for us to actually acknowledge the impact that that has on us as citizens just yet. Um, but we're definitely feeling the effects of it. And then, yeah, the more that they're rolling back regulations, the more recalls, or rather, since this is Pisces, no discussion around recalls, or seeing less recalls, less tracking, less just less public communications around some of the things that are causing widespread illness that people are not aware of, in addition to the ongoing COVID pandemic and things like that. Uptick in encouragement for farmers to diversify revenue streams because the USDA is about to end up like the EPA. No. Oh God, yeah, cop cities too. Child, that's probably a big part of this as well because Mars is on the midheaven of this chart, and don't love that. I love that y'all are so engaged in this conversation. I was worried that this would be boring, but I think it's interesting. But I think anything using astrology to do anything is interesting to me. I was saying this is the newest iteration of how this country functions. Absolutely. Yeah. The crossover between corporate and government interest. I mean, that's been happening, right? But it's especially escalating quickly because of this administration. I've noticed this new Saturn transit has coincided with a gradual change in the quality of industrial standards enforced by QA agencies. There's so much we don't know until the lid is blown. I definitely think that will be the case over the next 3 years, unfortunately, unless something happens to that man, um, or Democrats actually fight back, or somebody decides to fight back. Like, yeah, there will be exactly what you said, like changes happening, people feeling the changes, but nobody actively explicitly stating that, like, hey, these are the regulations that got rolled back that have led to these consequences, or these are the standards that we're working with, or rather the removal of standards, but not necessarily stating the impact that that will have. It will just be something people experience and not necessarily know how to connect the dots, because everyone has their own narratives that they're trying to push, especially if you're experiencing cognitive dissonance around this administration and what they're actually doing. So lots of that, definitely, in general. That's a good call. Thank you for that. Fingers crossed for whistleblowers with Jupiter and Gemini. I know Sherry mentioned that on a different live. Ooh, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that. And yeah, to Jim's point as well, whistleblowers, that would definitely be an act of courage. I know one lady, I don't remember her name, my dad was telling me about yesterday, is somebody who moved to another country, but she's been on a lot of podcasts exposing some of the behind the scenes truths about things about Israel and things about the administration and blackmail and things like that too. So definitely lots of, I could definitely see, you know what? Sherry probably has a point because especially since Mercury is going to be in Aries when Jupiter moves into Gemini, and that's going to be in the Jupiter ingress chart, right, for the next year through the whole transit is Mercury being in Aries. So one of the things I was thinking about is like risky or reckless communications, but also um, responsible communication on the other end of it. So trying to, on the one hand, probably expose people with power and to speak out against things, especially in a way that is controversial or disruptive. But again, having to protect yourself in that process. So having to flee or having to, um, I don't know, seek out protections in some kind of a way if you're going to be a person who is, you know, sharing truths that are disruptive, basically. So maybe that's another thing we see with Mercury and Aries is like as it's moving through Aries, kind of planting these seeds, or sowing, starting, initiating conversations that are disruptive and disruptive and I don't know, like exposing some of the things going on behind the scenes. I don't know. Just kind of thinking off. All of this is really just me kind of thinking out loud. So, grain of salt, all things that maybe we look and see if these are happening or if there's something else we notice along these lines. The newest Google headquarters is in El Salvador. Oh, great. Fantastic. And there's a bunch of travel propaganda being pushed out around how safe it is. Are they like saying that it's safer or are they saying that it's not? Because obviously El Salvador is not somewhere that well, I'm not going to say it's not somewhere that people don't want to be, but because of what's happening with deportation efforts and how their is it their president or I don't know what their leadership is called, but him trying to say that because they've cracked down on crime so hard that that's why they're safer when in reality that's kind of them. Okay, yeah, literally literally same thing I was saying, safer now to their new dictator. Yeah, they're cracking down on crime, which may or may not actually be crime, right? But because they're simply arresting more people and instilling fear in the population, I'm sure like yeah, it seems safer, but is it really safer? Who knows? Lots of propaganda in the same way that we do it. um Also, what's going on with Burkina Faso is definitely going to push this country to offset the social morale around here. I predict more gaslighting and lies. Definitely that. The El Salvador president is tough on crime, and that's why he's allowing Trump to deport folks to their shiny new supermax. Yeah, their prisons. Their yes, yeah, and you know what? Definitely something to think about. I don't know what I was gonna say. I was gonna say something about Aries, but I don't know off the top of my head. Okay, so back to the ingress. We talked about so another thing that's interesting with this Aries Mercury and Aries chart is Mercury and the Sun being in the seventh house of this chart. So the Sun usually representing somewhere that we have our focus on, but also leadership, people in leadership positions like presidents and um, monarchs and like actual leaders of countries. Having that in the seventh house and having Mercury in the seventh house there too it's making me think about more things to do with foreign affairs, which kind of fits what we were just talking about, actually. So maybe that's why my mind went there. But our own president, as well as presidents and monarchs and people in parliament, whoever, not parliament, but like, what are they called? Prime ministers and things like that in other countries and how communications with them in dealing with foreign affairs, especially around these things like deportation and laws that are changing around citizenship and stuff like that in the US. If it's in Aries too, this is kind of giving more of that like flexing power and just like trying to see how much shit they can get away with without consequences. Um, so don't love that for us. And especially too because the Aries house and or rather the Aries house, the seventh house and the second house that deals with money and finances and stuff like that. The ruler being Mars in Cancer in the 10th house kind of speaks to opposition and conflicts and attacks potentially on presidents, presidents and governments as they're trying to do things. So on the one hand, I could see that as being like what we were just talking about, like Donald Duck and the president of El Salvador, like having their negotiations and their agreements about what to do with citizens that we deport, and pretty much any other leader of another country who wants to suck up to Donald Duck, like making agreements and arrangements with him that basically allow Trump to recklessly assert his power and dominance, not only over US citizens, but over citizens of other countries. And then on the other side of it, I could see there being, governments and leaders like President, is it Xi or Xi in China, kind of pushing back against that, or at the very least, just ignoring him and kind of being like, well, we have more power because we've been basically like waiting for this day to come where the US empire falls and then China rises up because they, you know, are functionally better than us in a lot of ways, especially materially. So I could see that being, other presidents and other leaders um, trying to push back or trying to, um, I don't know, just kind of a lot of dick measuring contests going on as well. Like a lot of headbutting and a lot of that kind of what am I trying to say? Like, yeah, just conflict because there is the square between Mars and Cancer and then the Aries placements as well. Even though the sun is not squaring, Mercury will square Mars soon. And you know that always looks like beef and conversational beef and communication beef type stuff going on, as well as sometimes even physical conflicts. I'd be curious to know what else is going on with Netanyahu and Israel Palestine. I know that Israel has resumed bombings and attacks on Palestine. Um, and I don't know if anybody else feels this way. I feel like I'm noticing less conversation coming out because it's being obviously probably being hidden a lot more by our administration now, um, trying to keep a lot of those conversations from coming out and a lot of that from being exposed some more. So that's also something to consider. What else? What else? What else? What else did I write down? Yeah, probably more with the trade wars going on. I could see escalating trade wars, or I could also see um, potential. Well, do I? Let me think about this for a second because on the one hand, I want there to be de-escalations around trade wars with certain countries because it just like China's not backing down because they have their shit in place. They're not really worried about us. But these some of these other countries that do kind of rely on American manufacturing, not American manufacturing, but like because we don't manufacture shit but weapons, which I'm sure factors in there somewhere. But it does kind of make me wonder like which countries are dependent on us and which countries have a little bit more power to push back and escalate or counter negotiate or something like that. And I keep using that word negotiate because Libra's rising in this chart, so I don't know. Especially too because Mars and Cancer uh kind of imposes itself on Libra rising as well too. So if there's like if we go back to the whole Mars and Cancer thing of like the immediacy of needs, especially a nation's needs, and either us or other countries decide like, no, we really need this resource or we really need this like trade relationship or I don't know how any of this shit works. So I'm literally just speaking off of the astro. Um if there's something that we need but can't get from someone else, or if there's things that we provide that other countries can't get from anywhere else, I wonder how that will influence whether they do or don't cave to some of these um, tariffs and things like that. Let me see. The president of Burkina Faso is dodging assassinations every day, but he's also a great leader who folks love. A black general recently attacked his character. Interesting. A black American general. And then they kind of inadvertently put Burkina Faso on the map, and many folks in the diaspora are interested in what that government is doing for its people. Countries in Africa are establishing their sovereignty. Okay, good call, good call. So, yeah, if that's happening, then I wonder, because basically, like what I'm imagining, not even just based on this chart, but in general, based on like kind of what's happened up to this point, is that like on the one hand, Trump is just doing whatever he wants to see what he can get away with, right? Like, even with the tariffs, he's just kind of, it's a lot of posturing to me. Like, I don't really buy into it too much because there's only so much that he can do without some kind of repercussions, whether that's from us as people and then his approval ratings dropping, because we know he does give a shit about approval ratings, even if he doesn't really care about us that much. He likes to be seen as somebody who is competent and somebody who is good at his job, Mars and Leo rising. So when he gets that feedback that actually he kind of sucks, he does tend to change course. And at the same time, he also has his own agenda that he's trying to push through. And all of his other corporate buddies who are, basically trying to get richer off of all of this stuff, they all have their own agendas as well. So it does make me wonder about, especially once Jupiter moves out of Taurus to like the compliance of other nations or even the compliance within the country whenever it comes to passing legislation, just how much like people are actually going to comply and how much they're going to try to appease him. And then also if people do start pushing back once Jupiter moves on and Mars moves into Leo or something like that, just curious how the power dynamics shift once Jupiter's out of Taurus. And then even once Mars is out of Cancer too. Because on the one hand, I do think Mars in Cancer helps in the sense that I do think it can help us in the sense that, like I said, the immediacy of getting certain needs met and having certain resources, access to certain resources. But at the same time, it being Mars is disruptive. So there's that whole being motivated by discomfort thing and the whole like not having access and having to make do or having to find other ways to get our needs met through our relationships with each other, through nonprofits or organizations or communities or things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. Once the sun moves into Taurus and then we have Mars and Leo, like that's a whole other conversation, right? So I won't skip too far ahead, but that'll probably be something that we talk about. If not next week, then the week after. Once the sun moves through Taurus for the first time since Jupiter moving into Taurus, and the sun comes through to be like, what have you done with the place? What's going on in here? So much has changed. So, okay. Oh wow, it's already almost been an hour. The last couple of things I already talked about Moon and Leo a little bit, where us as people and our public attention is basically on Congress and our local governments, also allies of the US, and just in general, I think our main focus through this Mercury and Aries transit is on legislation, what's being passed, what's being introduced, what's being blocked, or what doesn't go through, and especially like judges getting arrested and shit like that. It's definitely something to pay attention to see if that increases. And if it does increase, what happens as a result? Are there any consequences for that? Are there any uprisings or any kind of resistance that comes up as a result? Because I don't necessarily see things declining. I just see them maybe intensifying, but again, as things intensify, is there backlash? That's kind of like my overall thought around this whole like cardinal T square situation. And then Mercury and Aries, the star of the show, already kind of talked about that. It's in the seventh house of this chart, dealing with national communications, trade, commerce, and transportation themes, dealing with foreign affairs and foreign policies. So, yeah, with Mars in Cancer being the ruler, like, did I actually talk about that? Hold on, let me go back to that part. Um, oh yeah, we did talk about that. Opposition and conflicts and attacks on presidents and governments. And also the nation's reputation and stuff like that changing as well. I guess I guess I mean obviously the country's reputation is in the shitter anyway. So I don't know, maybe other countries do start pushing back. Like maybe other countries start to get braver and bolder as well as a result of this seventh house Aries stuff. And because Aries has the upper hand on Cancer. So maybe we do see other nations start to push back and start to um, disrupt some of these plans, or at least start to step up and get a little bit bolder. And then maybe, hopefully, our own Congress people also start to get bolder, like we talked about with the impeachment stuff too. Like I would like to see a little bit more courage from everybody else, because like you just gonna let this man play in your face? Hello, you have power too. Embrace it. I would like to see it personally. And then last but not least, Jupiter in Taurus in the eighth house, talking about religious affairs, but also judicial affairs and actual judges and the justice system. I would imagine that being in the eighth house, like, yes, talking about stuff that we said with farmers earlier, but also just like we are in a recession. We've effectively been in a recession for a while. And we're talking about legislation and deportation and judges getting arrested and things like that, but there's also like again the actually financial affairs regarding foreign countries. Wait a second, because if the eighth house is ruled by the sixth by Venus in the sixth house, that is a little bit concerning. Um that is a little bit concerning around when it comes to this conversation around like deaths and mortality around health issues and workplace safety issues and things like that. But since it's Jupiter specifically, maybe it is just more um legislation. What's a different word I could use besides legislation that's more specific to judges? I guess rulings, maybe. Maybe we see more rulings around some of these cases that deal with like vaccine policies and stuff with big pharma, stuff with the health and wellness industry as a whole, also food industry. Um, but it does seem, I don't know, it also seems more related to like the nation's finances too. Does it? Maybe it doesn't. I don't know, because the eighth house does deal with like the nation's wealth and banks and things like that. Oh, I wonder if the banks are going to start having some issues. I closed my Wells Fargo checking account and I went with a credit union. So if that's something that you have access to, I would recommend getting away from corporate banks and moving into credit unions if you can. Just as like a larger, if that's something you want to do during this time period, then by all means. But in general, this year, I would say move to a more stable bank if you can, at the very least, because I do think the corporate banks are kind of unreliable, especially whenever you're dealing with potential recession, depression vibes. So yeah. Much to consider in that regard. And then Jim says, I wonder if global exports will reduce significantly. Actually, I feel like we were just talking about that, I think, when I was at my parents' house the other day. There was something about that too, like, because obviously, if everything is tariffed, then the stuff that we're exporting gets more expensive. Other people aren't going to want to buy it. And I think my dad was saying that, like, kind of going back to this whole sixth house farm industry thing, that like a lot of the meats and things that we would usually export potentially get cheaper here because we're not exporting as much. So I do wonder if we'll see a shift in prices. Like, yes, obviously things coming into the US get more expensive, but some of the things that we do produce in the US, if we can't sell them abroad, like there is the question of, do they go to waste or do we keep them and then the prices go down? But then you're also dealing with regulation issues. So then, if we keep it, like, are people's health then come into question? I don't know. Something about that whole fiasco is kind of a question too. There's cargo boats off the coast of China just waiting. They can't come to us. Oh, wait, say more about that. What does that mean? I feel like I'm so out of the loop. I need to start paying attention again. um, I need to start paying attention again because it makes all of this stuff easier to talk about instead of me literally just speaking about house significations because I don't really know the ins and outs and the nuances of all of these things. But that's also what's fun about astrology, is that even if you don't know all the details, you can at least get people to start thinking and noticing some of these things as they're happening and be like, oh, maybe that's what that's about in that chart. So I'm curious. I'm curious. But yeah, things to think about moving forward, since this is a Venus ruled chart. That Venus Saturn conjunction in the sixth house of this chart in Pisces is definitely worth noting. Other countries having standards for foods, medical products, and etc. that the US will fail to meet. This is also true. This is something that's been true for a while too, right? So I wonder if they're having to pay, because I do know a lot of countries won't like import a lot of our meats and things like that because the regulations around it are so shitty, that if the regulations are getting worse, then yeah, that's even less money coming in and more rejection, Taurus word, rejection of those goods because they're not up to the standards, which is another Taurus word. So that's a good call. Y'all be so smart. See, this is why I fuck with y'all. My audience is brilliant. Okay, so this is back to the cargo boats off the coast of China. Since the tariffs and trade war arguments, the shipping industry is like, USA, what you have on the shelves is it. You're not getting more for a bit. Okay, yeah, that's true. I've heard that a lot from people in the bike industry. And I think this was actually before the tariffs. They were kind of running into this issue where um, they were running into this issue where they were trying to stock up on a lot of different things because they knew that more wasn't coming in, but at the same time having trouble selling it because the market is ass and people just don't have money. So they kind of overestimated, which is a fire sign word, kind of overestimated their ability to like get rid of a lot of stock. But then for some of them, that kind of worked in their favor because now you're not getting more of it in. I don't know. It's giving like kind of a struggle to like just more regulation issues, I guess. If we're talking about cardinal sign stuff, like yeah, issues regulating stock, issues maintaining stock. I mean, there's a lack of Capricorn here too. So probably people buying things in excess, but then you buy it all in excess, like how much of it ends up going to waste? Where are you going to store it? Um, price fluctuations, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess in summary, over the next 3 weeks, the main things that we're looking at is health health and wellness legislation, food regulation issues, power dynamics with foreign countries, and legal matters within the US. And maybe that man potentially having articles of impeachment imposed upon him once again. Let me see. My mom just texted me. Oh, the puzzle. Wow. We were working on another really difficult 1,000 piece puzzle. I don't know if y'all can see. Oops. I don't have my portrait lock on, sorry, but this one was really difficult. So I guess there were some pieces missing, but they got a long way on that. I was over there working on that a little bit throughout the week too. It was a very difficult puzzle. Okay. Oh, facts. That's actually a really good point. For the sixth house stuff. Nurses and medical staff are like, we get so much equipment from China, we're cooked. Like, hell yeah, so much of our stuff coming from China. That things that people don't even realize, because people in their xenophobia have this idea of like Chinese products being subpar, being low quality, when in reality, it varies in quality just like stuff in the US. You know, if you produce stuff that's cheap, you know, fast fashion type stuff, then yeah, obviously the quality is not that great. But so many other things fundamentally come from China because their resources come from China, and they actually have manufacturing and equipment that is up to par, or, you know, up to standard in their ability to produce that stuff faster and have it be better quality is like way better than what ours is in the US. Like we're really dependent on China. So the fact that this man is trying to like wager a trade war with China just seems like he's intentionally trying to take the US economy. There is no bringing manufacturing back to America. That was never going to be a thing. There was no plan in place for that. He's on some other shit that we don't quite understand just yet. So, okay. I'm going to leave that where it is for now as far as um mundane astro goes. Maybe that'll get medical staff to put on masks for fuck's sake. I mean, I freaking sure hope so. But yeah, definitely a lot of stoppages everywhere. Definitely a lot of internal and external conflicts. So, okay. So that's enough of politics. What does Mercury in Aries look like for us as kind of a micro transit? You know, as a micro transit, um, and I say micro transit because it's only going to last like 2.5 weeks, and there's definitely a lot more going on in the sky. But the reason I wanted to talk about Mercury in Aries specifically really is because of Jupiter and Gemini. This is going to be the first. This is going to be the planet that basically sets the stage, rolls out the red carpet, and initiates this Jupiter and Gemini transit for us. So I felt like it'd be a good idea to kind of understand what Mercury in Aries is doing, since it's going to gain a lot more power once Jupiter shifts over. So, just thinking about Mercury in Aries as a transit in the way that it would directly affect us, I already kind of mentioned this idea of like responsible versus reckless communication, and like self expression that deals with us trying to leverage our power in a situation, or try to influence or impact change in our relationships through conversation and self expression, things like that. Um, Obviously, like one of the potential drawbacks of Mercury in Aries is like, you know, not thinking before you speak as much, or maybe not being as specific with the words and the language that you use, like Mercury and Libra would do, because you're more concerned with the urgency of the message, or again, trying to utilize or leverage your power and trying to have the most impact as quickly as possible, versus this kind of more strategic, collaborative way of communicating, or manipulative way of communicating, right? It's a lot of just like um, kind of harsh and fast type speaking is what it's making me think of. Audacity, yes, absolutely being an excellent word as well. So in some cases, that's definitely the tool for the job. Like Mercury being in Aries, you should utilize your personal power and responsibility in a situation, especially when dealing with speaking engagements. And then also with the sun still being in Aries too, the sun is exalted in Aries. This is a great time for coming up with ideas. Well, not just coming up with ideas, but actually putting ideas and plans into action and executing. Um, and you know, if there's something you've been indecisive about, like actually making a decision and moving forward with it. So a little bit less concern for consequences and outcomes and impact, and a little bit less concern for consequences and outcomes, and more concerned with taking action and doing what needs to be done and dealing with the consequences later. If that's energy that you've been needing, then yeah, the next 2.5, 3 weeks is a great time for that. And then especially once Jupiter moves into Gemini, I think speaking your mind and influencing change and um, trying to get your relationships or people you're in relationship with to actually respond to you, to hear you, to believe you, to consider you, whatever it is. There's a lot more, like Jim says, audacity, um, a lot more fire, a lot more charging forward in this particular way. And then with Mercury itself in Aries still being ruled by Mars in Cancer, what did I write down? I wrote something down about that. Um, oh, maybe I didn't. Yeah, I guess on the one side, like, yes, speak your mind, say what needs to be said. It might come off a little bit harsh, but sometimes, like, you need to have a little bit of fire behind it so that people take you seriously. And then on the other hand, like, I would say if you're going to proceed in a way that is a little bit more aggressive, by all means do so, but also have like a care plan or an aftercare plan in place or some kind of um some kind of conflict resolution, some kind of what do we call just like repair in general or emotional repair to happen after the fact, because there's a good chance that, especially with all this Taurus energy, maybe you Taurus and Venus and Pisces energy, maybe there's a lot that you haven't said, maybe there's a lot that you've been bottling up, maybe there's a lot that you still need to address that you haven't addressed out of fear of having it received the wrong way. So have something in place that after you say and do what needs to be said and done, you're not just totally blowing up all of your relationships in the process. Unless the relationships need to be blown up, then do what you need to do. Um, if you are maybe finding yourself being a little too overly considerate of how everybody else feels and what everybody else thinks of you, um, then I would wait until Jupiter moves into Gemini. Because if you try to do it over the next week or so, like that could be good for preserving relationships. Like if you have a conflict that needs to be resolved, but you want to maintain the relationship, then the next week and a half would be the time to do it. If you are looking to separate yourself or sever relationships or cut people off or move out of relationships, I would wait until after Jupiter enters Gemini to do that, because then language would be on your side, I would imagine, a little bit more. We still have the whole Jupiter Venus and Pisces square with reception thing going on, but that's interesting. We'll revisit that. I'm going to think about that a little bit more over the week. Okay, so for the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to pull some cards for this transit, and this may be a little bit of insight into Jupiter and Gemini as well, but for now, we're going to say that this card pull should speak more to Mercury and Aries and kind of what it's doing to set the stage for Jupiter and Gemini, as well as how it's kind of ushering out Jupiter and Taurus and kind of the rest of this Mars in Cancer transit too. So let me think of what to say, what to divine on. Oops. No. Just reminded me of that Jupiter Venus mutual reception. Yeah. Not mutual reception though, but just or well, right now mutual reception, yes, with Jupiter in Taurus and Venus in Pisces. That's still mutual reception, but I was talking about the uh square with reception that kind of gives Jupiter a little more influence, to be honest. So, okay. So, to our elevated and healed ancestors and spirits, Thank you for this day. Thank you for everyone that has joined the live. And thank you for your infinite wisdom and guidance and insight. We would just like to know what to expect from Mercury in Aries and how to navigate those situations, how to move forward, how to proceed, especially as a precursor to Jupiter in Taurus. What guidance do you have for us? What wisdom, what insight, what answers, what solution? How should we proceed? And what should we look out for? I just pray that the message comes through clearly through me as a medium and is received with clarity by those who are listening at whatever time they're listening. Ooh, and so it is. Ashe. Amen. All right. Okay. Card on the bottom for context is Knight of Swords. Go figure. Surprise to nobody. Knight of Swords is the bottom of the deck, setting our context for the next. How many cards do I want to pull? I'm gonna pull one and see how that goes. Five of Cups. It was actually. Did I pull that in reverse? I don't know if I pulled that in reverse, but I don't read reversals, so I'm not gonna do that today. But Five of Cups. Okay, I'm gonna pull two more. King of Wands and Seven of Wands. The hell going on, child? Okay, so Knight of Swords is our context. So thinking about Nine of Swords, immediately what I thought of is, if immediately what I thought of is Mercury and Aries. Mercury and Aries being the inverse of Mars and Gemini, first of all, because we did just have a Mars and Gemini retrograde situation, right? So this kind of feels like a continuation of that, but now from the Aries side, especially with the rest of these cards being wands that represent fire. Knight of Swords is kind of like making me think about thinking before you speak. Like I already said that a moment ago. Knights, they're fast, they're quick moving, they're about that action, they're ready to go. And Knight of Swords sometimes can look like maybe having a lot of ideas at once and trying to execute a bunch of ideas at once, or in general, just like quick thinking, quick speaking, and like moving with those thoughts, taking action on those thoughts and ideas. So that does feel like that what it does immediately make me think of is needing to think before you speak, but maybe not actually doing that. So just kind of going off of that for now. Swift minds. Five of Cups as the situation, right? Five of Cups in this deck looks like this. This is that card that usually represents grief for a lot of people. And at the very least, it is just focusing more on what went wrong than focusing on what went right, or focusing on the thing that you're sad and upset about and not realizing that there's still more. Or more focused on what went wrong, more focused on the grief and the thing that you're sad about, like being consumed with grief, especially since this is Cups. So consumed that you don't realize kind of what you have that's working for you or that's going well. This is also making me like something that just almost came to mind and then I had to focus and so it went away. What was it? With Five of Cups. Something that came up in the training. What was it? Hmm. Oh, we were talking about the whole negativity bias thing this weekend. Except for, and I wanted to tell y'all this too. In one of our Jupiter related conversations, we talked about how it takes, like, how our minds have a negativity bias. And so it's very easy to like zero in on threats and danger and harm and just like, negative stuff. And that it takes, I learned three, it's actually 2.901 good positive encounters to make up for one negative encounter. So the ratio is 3 to 1, not 5 to 1. I thought it was five. But it takes roughly three positive experiences to make up for one negative experience. And that kind of makes me think about this, like literally looking at the three spilled cups and not really appreciating so much the two upright cups. So I'm gonna keep that in mind while I look through the rest of these. It's kind of looking like, yeah, and overly focused on something that's going wrong. But then in the middle, we have King of Wands. So I think that's interesting. Because Seven of Wands is in the last position, and that's usually the position of the solution. King of Wands in the middle makes me think that there is like a strength or a power that we have that we're, for whatever reason, not recognizing, because it just seems like, where do I apply it? How do I use it? Where is my power in the situation? All I can see is the ways that I'm powerless. So if the obstacle is to actually like lean into your power, um or the obstacle rather is the struggle to actually like embrace and lean into your power, especially in ways that could empower other people. I'm using the word empower because that's an Aries word too. I think King of Wands is not just about its own, like your own power, but also in the ways that you actually utilizing your power you actually utilizing your power and your strengths and leaning into those, also benefits other people, also lifts other people up and brings other people up. Obviously sometimes people can get jealous too, but there is a way that you leaning into your power inspires other people as well. And like you also, just as one of your powers could just be inspiring other people, who knows. So with Seven of Wands, this is my personal Mars and Leo card. I see this card come up whenever my own Mars comes into question, so I think that's interesting in this case. Seven of Wands is about defending your territory. It's about defending yourself, your ideas. Like you're in some kind of a defensive posture. But in this case, like, because it's following the King of Wands, it's more about like preserving your shit, like standing your ground and kind of being like, having some dignity and some self-respect with whatever it is that you're contributing to a situation. Um so yeah, I think with Knight of Swords then as the context, this really is for us on the individual level, because my brain wanted to go collective. So let me just stay here with us. If you have been feeling insecure in any kind of a way around an idea or a suggestion or a conflict or something that you're trying to work out, um, in your life right now, and it hasn't been going your way so far, that doesn't mean that you should give up. Um, it means you should continue to persist. You should continue to push forward in some kind of a way. And also exploring other routes. Like I think also the 5 of Cups is kind of like, whatever it is you tried to do the first time didn't work out. And so it seems like there's no other solution, but there are other solutions. And I do think Knight of Swords is also good at coming up with other solutions. Maybe that's more Page of Swords. I don't know. But let me see real quick from the book. Knight of Swords. One who rides with great momentum. The Knight of Swords races forward. They are a powerful figure full of strength, determination, and eagerness to overcome all obstacles. I mean, hello, that's definitely giving Aries. But on the flip side, this knight is obsessed with making an idea into reality, and this desire can make them unaware of the difficulties they may encounter and the potential consequences of their actions. They expect all obstacles to fall before them and are unlikely to react gracefully if they do not. This is so Aries to me. actually, like, because that is kind of the Aries thing. The Aries thing is just like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to get to the solution and nothing can stop me, you know? And like, even if it's not something that you truly desire or feel passionate about, you do have the capability somehow to like make this thing happen. And so you're gonna do everything in your power to try to make it happen, even if that means kind of ignoring your body in the process or ignoring your own limits in the process. And sometimes you do have to push past your limits in order to achieve success. Like, this is not a sky where we're dealing with any Capricorn or Libra at the moment. So, yeah, you really are kind of being called to stretch beyond your comfort zone, to stretch out of your comfort zone and to do something you haven't done before in order to get results that you haven't had before, you know? So, if you are the Knight of Swords, you're likely focused on reaching a goal. What could possibly stand in your way? The Knight of Swords may signify that you are in an unstoppable freight train of ambition on the fast track to success, but it could also signify that you're cutting corners, charging forward without a plan, or refusing to see the potential negative impact of your valiant quest. So if it comes up for you in a reading, take the time to consider racing forward at full steam, the best way to get to where you want to go. Should you take a moment to pause and reconsider your plan of attack, or is there a possibility that this plan is dangerous and shouldn't be pursued at all? So I think in this case, yeah, whatever it is that you are struggling with, especially if it's around having difficult conversations or speaking up in some kind of a way, this is saying that, like, yeah, maybe the way you've been going about it hasn't been working so far, but if you do change course and um explore another path forward, then yeah, double down on that bitch. No, I'm kidding. Maybe you are doubling down and that's part of the problem. But whatever it is, this is not saying to give up. This is just saying to pick yourself back up and find another way forward because you do have the power, you do have the capability, you do have the strength. It's just a matter of figuring out exactly how to apply it in this situation in a way that will lead to success. Um, so don't cut yourself short, you know? Don't don't assume defeat before defeat has actually like solidified itself in front of you or something like that. Um, there are more ways to achieve a goal from Treat Talk. Absolutely. Yeah. I do think Knight of Swords is about exploring the multiple pathways forward, you know, kind of leaning into the air of it all. And again, if this first week is your planning phase, then use this first week as your planning phase. And then once Jupiter enters Gemini, like if it's not working out for you, then boom, here comes an influx of inspiration. And maybe you need to consult with some other people or other experts or somebody else who's trying to accomplish the same thing that you're trying to accomplish. But don't back down. Stand your ground. Keep pushing for it because whatever it is, it's like necessary not only for your growth but for everybody else's growth too. So those are my thoughts. I'm gonna leave it at that. Interesting. Interesting. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to drop a comment if you're watching this at a later time. Please also remember to like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so that you can be the first to know whenever I go live and to actually pull up on time every Sunday at 12 p.m. Central Daylight Time while it's daylight savings. But yeah, let me know if this resonates for you, if this is something that you needed to hear. Again, Mercury will enter Aries on Wednesday the 6th. Tuesday the 6th. I've been saying Wednesday this whole time, but it's Tuesday the 6th. And yeah, let me know if you notice a shift in your throat chakra. Because the whole Mercury and Pisces thing is finding it hard to get the words out. And also whatever motherfuckers be lying. So now it's time to start telling the truth, regardless of how other people take it. And then if you need to regard how other people take it, then deal with that as well, right? But the power is in your hands for the next 3 weeks. So let's see how this goes. Period. Yes, you are so welcome. Thank you for being here. Glad that you guys needed this. I'm sure I probably needed this too. I don't know exactly what I needed in general. I think for me, there's a lot around confidence because I've been doing this new job that does require me to be knowledgeable about things that I have not yet learned. So I think for me, this is a lot of taking the initiative to actually learn more and to discover more so that I can be better at my job because I do have a lot of skills and a lot of talents to offer. I just have not found a way to utilize them yet because I feel like I'm still new and adjusting and everything else. But at some point, you got to just start learning and trying shit and putting yourself out there to flex those muscles. So now is the time to flex those muscles. And one last thing I will add, especially while Mars is still in Cancer, movement. Add more movement into your life. If you need to walk around more, if just doing chores in your house is enough, right? Instead of just sitting around all day, you are going to want to move that energy. So go for a walk, work out, play sports, hang out with friends, walk the dog, play with your kids, like whatever you need to do, whatever movement looks like for you, add more of it. You might just find yourself doing it anyway. Um, but moving around will be great for all of the frustration and irritation and aggravation that tends to come with it. More Aries transits, especially while Mars is in a water sign. So, yeah, that would also be something that I add to all of this. It's also great for stimulating creative energy. So cool. Love this tree talk. Thank you. Good luck, y'all. We got it this week. Hang in there, and I will see you all next Sunday. Cheers. Yeah, that's it. I'll be on the internet. Toodaloo.